Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Herbert, Town Manager. With me is Jen Ball, our Assistant Town Manager, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 Annual Town Meeting Forum. This is in preparation of town meeting that is going to happen Wednesday night, May 4th at 7 p.m. at Ashland High School. This is our annual town meeting, one that we're required by statute to hold every year. And by our charter, we hold it the first Wednesday in May. So what I do is I usually use this as an opportunity to go through the different warrant articles. If people are here, they have a chance to ask questions about them and basically just give a very brief overview of what you would see on the warrant coming up on Wednesday night. If you would like to see documents associated with town meeting, we have a town meeting section of our website where you can find both the town meeting warrant with motions and FinCom recommendations, as well as the 2023 budget document, which is a substantial document, which I would encourage you to take a look at, only because it has a lot of information, not just about the budget, but just about town government as a whole. And I think you'll find it to be an educational experience if you choose to read that. So with that being said, I will go into our first warrant article, which is Here Town Reports. So this year we will be having a number of presentations being given. First, we will have a presentation from the Ashland Public Schools. Second, we will have a presentation from the Public Safety Building Committee, giving an update on the status of that project. Third, we'll have an update from the Mendez School Building Committee on that project. And then finally, I will do a brief wrap up or update, I should say, of town meeting articles that have passed in previous town meetings. So I'll have a number of updates on those. So not seeing any questions, I'll move on to article number 2. So article number 2 is a transfer from our general stabilization fund, or our rainy day fund, to our FY23 operating budget. So this year we're proposing to take out $450,000 from our stabilization fund to help support the operating budget. I'll give you just a little bit of background on this. When the pandemic hit and we didn't really know how the pandemic would affect our finances, we had some pretty dire predictions. What we did is we came up with a 3-year plan to draw from our stabilization fund to help support our operating budget. The first year we drew $1.4 million out. The second year we stepped it down to $900,000. The third year, which is this coming fiscal year, we've dropped it down to $450,000. And then next year we will actually be bringing that down to zero, hopefully, barring any other unforeseen events that might happen. Despite these withdrawals, we still have a pretty healthy balance in our stabilization fund. We're expecting, after we make this $450,000 withdrawal from our rainy day fund, we'll still have $7.4 million in our rainy day fund, which will equate to a little over 10% of our operating budget. 10% is the goal that we've established as part of our financial policies. Those are financial policies that were established by the Select Board, FinCom, and the school committee in conjunction with the town manager and the superintendent of schools. So we've steadily grown that fund using those financial policies from $1.4 million when I had started here as the assistant town manager and finance director, again, to a balance of $7.4 million. So if anybody has any questions about that, or else I'll move on. Okay. Our next warrant article is really probably the largest one for the night, which is our FY23 budget. And in discussing that, I'm going to share my screen. give you a little bit of a presentation here. So again, this is the operating budget, and the operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2023. This is just to give you an idea of what the process is. All the way back in November, the Finance Committee issues budget instructions for all the department heads in town. That's followed by more specific instructions that are issued by the finance director and myself, again, before the calendar year ends. We go through a process where after we develop a preliminary budget, we present that to the Finance Committee. After we get feedback from the Finance Committee, we make adjustments to that budget. And we also start making adjustments to that budget when we start getting more information from the state as to what kind of state aid that we are going to get. And from there, we try to make final decisions and round it out. And it's presented to the select board for approval. And then ultimately, this goes to town meeting for approval. So just to give you an idea for the goals for our fiscal year 23 budget was, first, we want to support existing projects through proper staffing and funding. Those of you that have been in town for a couple of years know that we have a lot of projects that are going on. And we want to make sure that we're able to support those projects and support the completion of those projects, not only with proper funding, but with proper staffing. And that helps us, that goes into point number 2. That helps ensure that we retain staff as well. One of the things that you might have heard of throughout the pandemic is this idea of the Great Resignation, where people are resigning or transferring jobs, going to different lines of work, and they're doing it in mass numbers. And the municipal sector has not been immune to that. So our budget helps to ensure the retention of staff. We wanted to do all of this with no override, no operating override. We feel like we can accomplish this stuff and these goals within our current operating budget and the allowances that we have under state law and with the revenue that we bring in. So there's no tax override being proposed as part of this budget. And then finally, something that I'm particularly proud of is wanting to keep Ashland one of the best values in Metro West. And that's not according to just my opinion or others' opinion. It's actually according to objective metrics. And so that's, we might not be the richest community. We might not have the most things. We might not have the nicest things. But again, what we try to do is make sure that Ashland is the best value in Metro West. Some of the existing capital initiatives, which I talked about earlier, included the public safety building, the Mendez School, our downtown project, Pond Street and 126, the Warren District, the Valentine property, the Riverwalk project, the Quiet Zone, Cadillac Paint, the strategic plan, and then a number of bridges that we have in town, as well as supporting the completion of the Upper Charles Trail. I had mentioned staffing earlier and how important that is to an organization and how important it is to the community. We initially looked at 5 positions here, adding 5 positions in this budget. And I should say this is just on the municipal end of things. The school department, when they give their presentation, will give you a good idea of their needs and what they're looking for in their budget. But we're looking for, we have inserted in here a project manager and procurement specialist, a senior accountant and financial analyst, a deputy fire chief, as well as a town engineer. We did look at the library assistant, but made a decision not to fund that at this time and instead increased the salaries of some of our pages. So the project manager and procurement coordinator would help manage a lot of the capital projects that you see, as well as the number of procurements that we go through on an annual basis. The senior accountant and financial analyst will help with a number of tasks like reconciliation, warrants, as well as doing special projects and analysis for the town and the community. We have a deputy fire chief that's being proposed for, at least in FY23, for only half the year, moving to full-time FY24 and beyond. And we also have funding in for a town engineer, which again will help us in the DPW reduce some of our contracted services costs. So we can have somebody on staff who does things like peer review. And then finally, I wanted to just talk about some of those objective metrics when we're going through, I want to talk about Ashland being the best value in Metro West. So what I've put on the screen here is, it's a list of 13 communities in Metro West, and it's their expenditures per capita. So it's the amount of the expenditures divided by the number of people in that community. And so as you see here, Ashland is third from the bottom, just barely. One thing I want to point out is that this includes our enterprise funds. So funds like the water and sewer and trash and fields funds. But the other communities, it's not their enterprise funds are not factored in. So we're actually a little bit better value than what you see here. So again, hopefully this resonates with most of you, or all of you, hopefully. Again, just trying to show that we don't always have the most expensive or the nicest things, but we do try to make ourselves be the best value. And I think you see that not just in our municipal services, but we also feel like you see that in our school system, especially as well. So that's just a general overview. I'll go over just some of the larger changes that you might see in the budget as you go through. In administration, you'll see that budget go up 3.39%. And all of these subtotals have within them a number of different departments. Under finance, you see that go up 16.55%. That is in largely because of the new financial analyst position that I had mentioned previously. Development services actually decreases 10.33%. We've had a number of new staff members come on that are less senior than the people that they are replacing. But the other main thing is that we have moved our inspection salaries for gas and electricity and plumbing over to a new revolving fund. Public safety increases 5.33%. That is largely driven by that deputy chief position I mentioned earlier, as well as we have a number of grant funded positions in our fire department, and we are picking up more and more of the cost of those positions as the grant funds draw down. Our health and human services budget goes down slightly by almost a percentage point. Public works goes up 5%. Education goes up 4.14%. Excuse me. Our debt service actually goes up 11.33%, and that includes non-excluded debt, and that is debt that's within the levy, within what we talk about the tax levy, and also what we call excluded debt, which are projects that are funded outside or over and above the tax levy. And we have two of those projects on the general fund side that we're really dealing with right now, and that's the Mendez School and the public safety building. So again, debt increases 11.33%. Employee or capital projects fund is level funded at $500,000. Our employee pension goes up 6.43%. That is a number that we're given by the Middlesex County Retirement System. Unemployment compensation goes down actually 42%. mainly because of the after effects of the pandemic. We're not seeing as much unemployment. Group health insurance actually goes up 6.34%, which equates to a pretty big dollar figure. So over 430,000. Our other insurance goes up 9.35%. So our total benefits and insurance line will go up 5.92%. And we have a salary contingency in there that is actually going down this year by almost 50%. And our reserve fund is level funded at 450,000. So all in all, for our general fund, again, that's fun. That's the fund that is funded through property taxes, local receipts, and state aid. That budget is $71,677,750, which represents a 4.9% increase over the previous year. Our enterprise funds, including the water enterprise fund, the sewer enterprise fund, trash collection and field management, cable access, and stormwater, those are all separate funds. And the water enterprise fund goes up 6.82%. The sewer enterprise fund goes up 4.64%. The trash collection fund is actually going up almost 15%. And that's unfortunately due to a new contract that we signed with Waste Management. Unfortunately, their costs have increased substantially. And of course, that gets passed on to us. Field management actually goes down almost 50%. The cable access fund goes down almost 10%. And our stormwater fund actually goes up 2.2%. So all in all, our total, the total of all the funds in our FY23 budget is $83,585,078, which represents a 4.89% increase. I should point out that is appropriated expenses. We actually budget a little bit more for things called unappropriated expenses, and those are state charges and things of that nature. So I know that's really dense and a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move to Article 4, which is the capital request. And Jen, would you mind doing that one?
Sure, no problem. In addition to the $500,000 that is allocated in the general fund, we'll be also asking town meeting to approve $1.7 million worth of projects that will be done in our general fund borrowing. 200,000 of that would go towards the girls and boys locker room in the middle school. And then 1.5 million would allow us to replace a 20-year-old tower truck or ladder truck for the fire department. When we were looking at asking for a borrowing here, we also looked at previously allocated projects that might still have a balance. And so we were able to identify $264,092.27 worth of projects that either came in under budget or were sort of done slightly different than initially intended. For instance, there's two projects on here for the Minda School, one for bathroom renovations and one for a PA system, where we did minimal amounts of projects because we knew that we were moving towards a new building. And so rather than spending $85,000 on a new PA system, they were able to install additional speakers for $10,000, so to get us through while we're building a new school. Those are the largest, and then also we had largest balances, and then also we were able to complete the Howe Street sidewalk project significantly under budget, and so we have some funds that will be reallocated towards this project, towards the fire truck. Does anyone have any questions for that?
Thanks, Jen. I think you covered it well. We'll move on to the next article, which is article number 5, which is a transfer to the OPEB trust. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. It's a fancy way of saying really retiree health insurance. again, not like the most acute thing that we have to worry about right now, but it's something that we need to look forward to in the future and start planning for in the future. And so one of the things that we did in order to do that was we established something called an OPEB trust fund, which puts money away for the purposes of paying for our OPEB liability as that starts to grow and that starts coming due to the town. We're looking at putting in $250,000 from our account, a line item that we have each year into that. That will bring currently our balance is $5.3 million, which is substantially more than when we started this in 2013, where we only started out with 400,000. So again, we've made good progress. That number, that $5 million figure, is not as important as, at least in my mind, it's not as important as what's known as the funded ratio. So the funded ratio takes your liability or your actuarial liability and sees how much you've prepared for it. And it's expressed as a percentage, a funded ratio. And this year, we did see a slight increase over the previous year from 7% to 7.13%. So certainly, I would like to see that delta grow as we go on in future years, but we're certainly making progress. So, does anybody have any questions related to OPEB? Okay. 6 is an increase to the economic development budget. The economic development budget is funded through the local meals tax. This is something that was this idea of having a dedicated fund to economic development through the meals tax was actually presented to town meeting a few years ago and passed, and we actually had to get special legislation for that to effectuate that and make that work. And what we do is we fund our economic development activities out of this fund, including our business incentive program, which has a number of different sub-programs underneath it. So this year we're asking for an additional $60,000 from that fund to go into the economic development budget to help fund the business incentive program and an increase in salary for the director. So usually we try to get all of this in at the beginning of the year. This year the programs were so successful and were utilized so much that we actually need a little bit of money, a little bit more money this year. But this, the $60,000 we're looking at again, funding mostly the business incentive program with that, and particularly 3 businesses. First of all, Tyler Ferraro is opening a towing and recovery business on Magunko Road, so to help fund that. Uppercuts Boxing Club, which you may be familiar with at the Mill Building, is moving to the old Legion Building, and so this will fund the incentive program for that. And then also Cinti's Kitchen is looking to open a brick and mortar store here in town, and so the economic development fund is being tapped to help with that. So just this business incentive program is really a key component to our overall economic development strategy. And the whole point behind it is that you give, you help businesses out in moving here into town or expanding in town. And by just putting in a little bit of public investment, you realize a greater return of private investment into those buildings and into those spaces. So our most recent economic development report, when we did the analysis there, we put in less than $250,000 of public money into the business incentive program, and that yielded $3.5 million in private investment. So it's a huge return on investment for the town and the community. Any questions on the Economic Development Fund? Not, I'll move on to the annual consent article. Annual consent, like it says, is done annually. This gives us an opportunity to carry out some more routine items in one warrant article, I could say. One of the key elements of this consent article is the authorization of revolving funds. It establishes the purpose for which the revolving funds can be used, as well as a cap for spending or income, or both. One thing in particular this year that's new is, I mentioned this during the budget article, we're actually establishing a revolving fund for our electrical, plumbing, and gas inspections. This will help us better account for those inspections and paying our inspectors. So that's the main difference this year in the annual consent article. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Next is another annual consent article, but this is related to the Community Preservation Act funds that we have. Give me 1 second. The Community Preservation Act is a special fund that was established in town in the early 2000s to help pay for specific projects that are related to affordable housing, open space, historic and recreational purposes. And what we have done over the years is we have pledged future CPA revenues for projects or purchases that we have acted on before. And so where there are associated bond payments associated with that, this authorization article is necessary to authorize those bond payments. It also helps dictate where the revenue goes, because they're supposed to be designated into 4 particular buckets. So 10% of your revenue that you bring in goes into a historical bucket, 10% goes into an open space bucket, 10% goes into an affordable housing bucket, and the rest goes in what's known as the undesignated reserve. So this appropriates that funding into those buckets as well. So, any questions related to that? If not, we will move on to the change of the demo delay bylaw. And Jen, I'll turn this over to you.
Sure, thanks. This is a proposed change to our current bylaw for demo delay, bylaw for historically or architecturally significant properties. And this article will be sponsored by the Historical Commission and presented by one of their members at town meeting. There was a group of citizens that had been sort of reviewing our bylaw and put forth some of, or all of these actually changes as a citizen's petition, which is actually on the warrant as Article 10. We can get to that in a moment. But they presented this to the Historical Commission, and the Historical Commission decided to adopt and sponsor the bylaw as set forth by the citizens. It has primarily 4 changes to the bylaw. One is to the triggering date for which that the bylaw covers. Our current bylaw says that if the home was built January 1st, before January 1st, 1940, it would trigger us to look at that. And this change is proposed to change it to 50 years or older as the triggering, and then the extent of the delay is also the second component. So our current bylaw allows the Historical Commission to hold a hearing and then impose a 9-month demo delay. This new bylaw will allow a building that is 50 years or older 1 year a demo delay, as well as anything over 100 years up to 24 months, so up to 2 years. This bylaw also sort of gives the Historical Commission an opportunity to possibly extend that if they don't feel that the homeowner has done its due diligence to try to restore or maintain the historical structure. The third piece of it increases the penalty for violating this bylaw. So as it currently reads in our bylaws, if you remove a home that was historically significant in violation of this bylaw, that the homeowner would not receive a building permit for 2 years. The new bylaw extends that to 5 years. And then the last change is really clarifying what was covered under this bylaw. Sort of it extends to building permits that would remove historical structures or elements.
All right. Thank you, JB. The next article in substance is the same as the one that Jen just covered, but it's being put forward as a citizen's petition. And really who spearheaded that is a lady named Helen Nicole, and Helen is here with us. Helen, I would invite you now to say a few words about your citizen's petition and why you put it forward and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Oh, hi, Michael. Excuse me. The citizen's petition was put forward basically so that we'd have a stronger demolition delay bylaw in Ashland to hopefully maybe protect some more of our historic buildings as historic and architecturally significant buildings, and giving them a better chance at not having developers look at those properties when they're thinking about buying them. It doesn't stop them from buying them. It doesn't stop them from knocking them down eventually, but it gives them a little bit more reason to look twice at it. Makes it just a little bit stronger than what we had initially. And as you said, it was supported by the Historic Commission. And that's basically it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Helen. All right. I'll move forward to our last warrant article of this town meeting, which is the exact title of it. Accepting a net zero framework resolution. And this has been put forward by the Sustainability Committee. And so let me give you a background on what we're trying to accomplish here. So back in the fall of 2019, town meeting in Ashland actually passed a resolution to achieve net zero by the year 2040. And so as part of that, we've taken a number of steps, including the completion of a greenhouse gas inventory form. We've also had initial drafts of strategies that have been developed with partners such as MAPC and other town stakeholders. In fall of 2021, we adopted a resolution at town meeting to encourage the legislature to give communities the ability to adopt their own electrification resolutions in town and electrification bylaws, I should say. And really at this point, we're poised to move from conceptual ideas and strategies and thoughts into concrete action plans. And so the Sustainability Committee has put forward a framework to help us do that. And that's what's being put forward to the community at this time. And I know the Sustainability Committee will have a presentation related to this, and looking forward to having that and that discussion. So, any questions? Well, if not, that wraps up our review of the warrant articles for the annual town meeting on May 4th. Again, it starts at 7 p.m. The moderator starts it at 7 p.m. sharp. No matter if the people at whether I'm there or not, or whether other people who are presenting articles or not, he'll start it right at 7. He keeps us all prompt. Again, that's at Ashland High School in the auditorium. So again, if you have any questions between now and then, feel free to write me. Send me an email at mherbert, Herbert, at ashlandmass.com, and I'll do my best to answer those prior to town meeting, or you can bring your questions to town meeting as well. Looking forward to a civil and sometimes lively discussion at town meeting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. So those of you that have joined us, thank you. I want to thank WACA for promoting this as well as broadcasting this. And Jen, I want to thank you for being here. And Helen, I appreciate you being here as well. So all that being said, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.